Welcome to Running the Table, the podcast where we run through everything on the table in the world of sports. And the NBA draft is upcoming. So we're going to take a look at some prospects and some teams, what they might do, who might go where, and how that could shape the future of the NBA. Draft day is a very important day, so we're going to cover it. Alongside that, we're going to cover some other recent big NBA news. So, Tim, are you ready to go?
Let's run it. Draft's right around the corner.
Let's do it. But first, there's been a blockbuster trade in the NBA. Bradley Beal traded to the Phoenix Suns. The Washington Wizards trade Bradley Beal to Phoenix in exchange for Chris Paul, Landry Shamet, multiple second-round picks, and multiple pick swaps. The Wizards will also throw in Jordan Goodwin and Isaiah Todd, as the Suns currently have like 6 guys on their active roster.
Yeah, like literally no one.
And this is an interesting point for both teams. We're going to start with the Wizards as they officially enter full rebuild mode. It allows them to offload that hefty Bradley Beal contract. And as far as Chris Paul goes, this caught him totally by surprise, didn't know it was coming. So he can be rerouted to a different team if Chris Paul so chooses.
Yeah, and that's really the only logical decision here. He's not playing for the Wizards. I've seen talks about him potentially having a reunion with the Clippers, as well as a lot of people obviously talk about the Lakers as a likely possibility, given their point guard kind of up in the air question of Kyrie. Is D'Angelo Russell the answer? But either way, he's obviously not going to stay with the Wizards. I don't really know how to feel about the trade in its own right, just because of the fact of, like, obviously it leaves Phoenix with basically no depth. You obviously offload the contract for the Wizards, but why do I almost feel like, I know that the Suns gained Bradley Beal, but it almost feels like neither team won this trade.
Yeah, you know, if you want to call it like a win-win trade, certainly an even trade in what both teams are trying to do.
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense for both teams in terms of the direction that they want to go. But when you look at the Suns specifically, I don't know. It looks great on paper when you have 3 guys that averaged 20 plus last year. Points per game, that is.
Yeah.
But the rest of the team on paper, there is no team.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, the Suns just kind of continue to swap pieces in and out in pursuit of a championship. I mean, at the deadline, you acquire Kevin Durant, and then you get this big 3 of CP3, Book, and KD, and then you trade Chris Paul, and then you bring in, you know, Bradley Beal, and so now you got Devin Booker, Bradley Beal, Kevin Durant, which is 3 supermax contracts, which are going to talk money, and then DeAndre Ayton, who they locked down to a supermax as well. So those 4 guys by themselves will make, drum roll please, $162.7 million next year.
That's
just
atrocious.
By themselves.
That's atrocious.
And that in and of itself already puts them over the luxury tax.
Four guys. That's all it takes.
Those 4 guys puts them over the luxury tax. And the second sort of level of the luxury tax is at $179.5 million. So that gives you out, just if we're those 4 guys, and however you have maybe $10 million to work with until the second level of the luxury tax kicks in, and the CBA that is upcoming.
And you have to fill out the rest of your team still.
Yeah, the CBA is really designed to limit the roster flexibility above that like $180 million limit. And this is where it gets really interesting for the Suns, because they're going to need to rely on a lot of bargain bin deals, and they're going to really need to get creative on how they're going to figure this out. So this trade definitely gets the Suns all in on a championship. They're moving in that direction. And the Washington Wizards are moving into the land of scrapping it, starting anew. And in other NBA news, Morant suspension has finally been handed down. He's been suspended 25 games by the NBA after being filmed posing with a firearm in the car. This is not the first time he's been suspended, because he was suspended 8 games in March after an Instagram live video showed him with a gun in a Denver area nightclub. So repeat offender, but the logic for the suspension via Adam Silver goes as such. Ja Morant's decision to once again wield a firearm on social media is alarming and disconcerting, given his similar conduct in March, for which he already was suspended 8 games. The potential for other young people to emulate Ja's conduct is particularly concerning. Under these circumstances, we believe a suspension of 25 games is appropriate and makes clear that engaging in reckless and irresponsible behavior with guns will not be tolerated.
Yeah, I mean, you hear opinions on both sides about it being like, well, not, I won't say both sides, but in terms of people talking about it, some people, and including like, I believe it was Brian Windhorst was talking about, oh, he's losing up to $50 million, potentially. You talk about with the opportunity to earn an all NBA team and what that would mean to his contract and the money he'll miss out for actually playing. Then there's other people who say like, 25 games, that, it should be up to like half a season. And I don't know where I really fall on that, other than the fact that I really, really hope this is the last that we hear of this, and the last that we have to deal with this type of situation, because it's really,
I agree.
it's not only unfortunate, but so unbelievably unnecessary. Like I don't know why Ja Morant thinks that kind of behavior is ever the answer, even if people have talked about, like, if you feel threatened, or if you feel like might actually be people that could be attempting to harm you places. That's what security is for, especially for guys of that caliber and that level of stardom. It's certainly not like he doesn't have the money to pay for his own security if he really feels that way, but it feels more like he's just a young guy who has been influenced by the wrong people, things out there that he's seen, to have this type of behavior of waving around guns. It's one thing to have a gun. A lot of guys out there have guns. I'm sure there are NBA players, plenty of them, that own guns in their own right, but it's the showing them off and sort of glorifying them on social media that everyone rightfully has a problem with.
Yeah, and I just want to say, first of all, Tim, neither you nor I are about that life.
No,
Not even
most certainly not even close.
Not even close. So neither one of us are in a position to pass judgment on anybody that came from that background. But
for sure.
But what we can say is that Adam Silver in the NBA repeatedly told Ja Morant, if you continue this type of behavior, there will be consequences. And Adam Silver has a point that Ja Morant is a young superstar in this league. It is a bad look for the NBA. It is a bad look for Ja Morant. It is a bad look, especially with the number of people that may look up to him as a role model, and the number of people out there that are impressionable, and the impact that could have if they see Ja Morant doing this kind of behavior, and they get the idea that because, oh, Ja Morant can do it, I can do it, that is not okay.
Dangerous. Yeah.
And as a role model and as somebody in a position of a platform, Ja Morant needs to be better. So this suspension, at least in the length, I think is fair, considering the previous suspension and the notion that the consequences would be more dire if he continued this behavior, which he did. Putting it bluntly, play stupid games, win stupid prizes.
Yeah.
And if you want to compare precedent, Miles Bridges was suspended 30 games for his felony domestic violence charge. And the logic from the commissioner was that Ja Morant's actions are a safety concern and not a legal one, which is why, he didn't get nearly as many games. And Ja Morant hasn't actually done anything illegal.
Yeah, as far as we're aware, he has not actually broken any laws in any of the situations.
Yeah.
But once again, that kind of remains to be seen.
It's the message that Adam Silver is trying to send to him.
Yeah, and it's the message that he's trying to convey to the league and to, everybody out there that, this is not what this league is about. This is not what, while he's at the helm, he wants to nip this at the bud as best as possible. And the fact that we've had, two of these situations with the same guy in such a short time frame, that is where, things have really escalated from, like you said, the 8 games to 25. In general, yeah, I think it's the right decision. And I didn't hear that and think, man, should have been heftier. Because I mean, 25 games, you still have to think about it. It's significant.
It's
very
of the
significant.
Season.
Yes. The real question is going forward, what will we see? Obviously, I mean, apologies and messages and statements through your agent and whatnot is all talk, but until we see some actual difference, because we all thought that everything that he came out seemed very sincere after the first time, so now with his second incident, you kind of prove that your word doesn't mean a whole lot right now. So it's up to Ja Morant to improve and repair his image and, I would say, trustworthiness to really the general public.
How this story unfolds going forward to be determined, but that's all we know for right now. On a completely different note, the day that changes the NBA draft is upcoming on Thursday. So we're going to go through the order of the draft and take a look at what teams could do at each spot, starting with the very obvious slam dunk number 1 overall pick with the San Antonio Spurs.
I wonder who they're going to do.
Yeah. Could it be the best prospect we've seen since LeBron James, the 7'3" freak of nature that can shoot and do literally everything? Victor Wembanyama.
That guy. Yeah.
That guy. San Antonio is going to luck into a generational talent yet again and adds it. The legend of the San Antonio big man continues with the Admiral, the big fundamental, and now Wemby.
Yeah, I mean, you talk about a guy that is so unbelievably different than the
unicorn,
last
man.
Superstar big that the Spurs had, but obviously unlike anybody that we've actually seen. They've talked about the fact, I mean, once it was announced, whoever got that first overall pick is taking him no matter what. But I'm really interested to see what he's actually able to do at the NBA level, because obviously there's so much talk and hype and expectation there. I think I saw some metric that puts him at a 50% chance of being an all-star. I would love to know how they calculated that number.
Jeez, that's putting it lightly, because the expectations for Victor Wembanyama, I would almost argue, are too high right now, because this is still a 19-year-old kid that hasn't even played a minute of NBA basketball. I saw a post on ESPN, who would you rather start a franchise with, Luka Doncic, Jason Tatum, or Victor Wembanyama? I'm like, geez,
has not played yet.
Let the kid get drafted. And I heard something if he doesn't have a career like a franchise changing player, like a Shaq, like a Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, then his career's a disappointment.
People are already going to put him out as a bust if he doesn't become literally an all-timer from day one.
Okay, so what happens if he struggles early? Are people going to write him off as a bust? See, that's where I think it's really unfair.
What happens if he needs to try to put on 15, 20 pounds to deal with some of the physicality, maybe? What happens if he gets injured?
That's not going to be an issue.
Well, what happens if he gets injured because of the fact that
that's true?
What does it take for him to not be a bust in these people's minds when the expectations is so, it's literally unfathomably high?
It's unbelievably high. It is unfairly high.
We saw some of this kind of hype to a certain extent when people were labeling Luka Doncic as that superstar before he was drafted, but then again, he still wasn't even the first overall pick. But it was one of those situations, super young kid, talent coming out of Europe. It's clear that he knows ball really well, great player, and everybody expected him to, make that major difference. Now, granted, he has played very well, but some people also claim or have the opinion that Luka Doncic has been some type of a bust because he hasn't taken the Mavericks anywhere super significant yet, other than the conference finals in
Yeah, they went to
2021.
the Western Conference Finals one time, and
Yeah.
like the standard is far too high. Whether he's going to live up to it, that is going to be interesting to watch. Not just like his rookie season, across
Yeah.
his entire career. Now with the
Let's just
second,
say sports bettors don't go making any bets on the first overall pick because we already know what it's going to be, and you're not going to
yes,
make any money off of that pick.
no, you won't. The second overall pick is where things get a little interesting because there's the top three prospects of Victor Wembanyama, and then you have Alabama's Brandon Miller, and then Scoot Henderson, the point guard for the G
Henderson.
League Ignite.
I'm sorry, you mean the linebacker for the G League Ignite? He is huge.
Oh, hey, he plays point guard, but he's an absolute
He's
specimen.
massive.
Yes, he is. And where the Charlotte Hornets can do at number 2 is they have 3 options. Option A is take Brandon Miller. Option B is take Scoot Henderson. Either way, you have somebody to pair with LaMelo Ball for the future. They're both uber talented, should play out really well in this league. Option C is where it gets a little more interesting because there have been some rumors floated around that the Hornets could move number 2 to the Pelicans with a package for Zion Williamson. Zion Williamson has been rumored to be on the trade block, and whether the Pelicans decide to move him and for what is TBD. So that could be an interesting thing that could happen come draft night. Obviously, we're not going to predict any trades, although they will most likely be flying around the board when draft day comes. They're just too unpredictable, so we're just kind of doing this as if these teams stay pat right now. But it's going to be really interesting to see what the Hornets do.
Yeah, they've got options, like you said.
Well, a lot of these
me
teams have
personally,
options, but it
yeah.
seems like
they have a lot of like not only viable but also likely talked about options because of the multiple players that they could pick that are obviously the super high level, but also the active talks of a potential trade there. And if I'm the Pelicans, I got to be completely honest, I don't think I would make a package to trade for Zion right now, because the big thing is he has not been able to put together a real profile of his talent in the NBA thus far when he's healthy, because the man cannot stay healthy. He was an all-star, I believe, once. Was he able to play enough games to be an all-star?
I believe so. But this is the thing, though, with Zion being a former number 1 overall pick, if you can get Zion plus for the number 2, would you do it? And that's the interesting question.
Yeah.
You know,
I guess it depends. It depends on what the plus is. It depends
on
how much they're willing to give up.
I mean, if the offer is too good to pass up, who's saying that, that the Charlotte Hornets and the New Orleans Pelicans don't make that move? But either way, if they don't, Brandon Miller, Scoot Henderson, big name impact players, and
neither one of those guys drafting at 2 would be a particularly bad decision, I don't think. So regardless of who they ended up taking,
you can't really go wrong there. And then with a 3rd overall pick, the Portland Trailblazers are going to take the other guys still available of Brandon Miller and Scoot Henderson, whoever goes at 2.
And I think that would be the wrong decision.
Why do you say that?
Because Damian Lillard has made it clear that he does not want to have any more types of rebuilds at the Portland Trailblazers. Either they have to commit now to drafting whatever guy they want to take at 3 and trading Damian Lillard, or they need to use that pick to try to obtain significant veteran talent to make a push. And in my opinion, I don't think I still view Damian Lillard as a top 5 point guard in this league. I mean, I don't think that's
a game changer.
I don't think that's crazy to say.
I don't think it is.
So
either.
I don't think whatever package that they would get for him, plus a rookie of either, likely Scoot Henderson or Brandon Miller, I don't think whatever package you're going to get from there would be more valuable than whatever package you could get for the 3rd overall pick and still utilizing what you have with Damian Lillard.
Well, let's talk about that. The potential package that the Blazers have been exploring is the third overall pick and potentially Anthony Simons and, plus, 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 depending on the player for a high level guy in this league. Now, my Portland Trailblazer insider has informed me that some of the top guys that they're looking at are Jaylen Brown, Brandon Ingram, Zion Williamson, and Kristaps Porzingis. Now, in those names, one of them is not like the others, clearly.
Oh gosh, please don't trade for Porzingis.
What's wrong with Tingus Pingus?
Not Tingus, Pingus.
I mean,
I think Damian Lillard probably would still request to get traded if they traded for Tingus, Pingus.
I mean, you could probably just move Anthony Simons and like a future first for Tingus Pingus and still have the third overall pick.
Yeah, you very well could. In that case,
Either way. Well, let's talk about like if they decide to swing a trade for Jaylen Brown. That's where the extra like plus comes in, because that's going to be big if you pair Dame and Jaylen Brown. Is that enough to make Dame stay?
I think it would be, because you give him a very formidable number 2 option, and some could argue that with the way they've played, that arguably Jaylen Brown could be considered as better, but I still considered Damian Lillard to be the better overall complete player. And I think then it's a matter of what can you do either with other deals or in potential free agency to sign other role guys. For instance, some guy that randomly comes to mind off the top of my head, I don't know if he would really consider going there, but Kyle Kuzma has just gotten off of his, I believe he declined his player option for the Washington Wizards. So he is an unrestricted free agent to go somewhere. That is a guy that, could be a valuable role player at a position of need for them, as far as I'm aware. So there's guys like that out there. I think that if they were to create a backcourt like Damian Lillard and Jaylen Brown, I think that would be enough to have Dame go, okay, let's do this.
Yeah, it could be a really, really interesting situation depending on what the Blazers do, but we got lots more picks, so let's keep it on moving. At number 4, the Houston Rockets. The two potential options that I see them going with are either taking Amen Thompson because the team lacks a dynamic point guard there, or they can take Cam Whitmore. I think the deciding factor is going to be whether they bring back James Harden, because that has been floated around.
That'd be crazy.
That would be absolutely nuts. A James Harden reunion for the Rockets. But either way, with Amen Thompson, that'll give you that extra element of a ball handler and a scorer. And Cam Whitmore is also just a freak athlete. So I think you have some really good options to pick from.
Yeah, me personally, I think it is underrated of how valuable it is to have that star or borderline star point guard that can handle the ball and control so much of your offense. Obviously, you see some of the teams around the league that have that kind of guy and what it does for them. I think it would be a smart decision. Not that Walker or Whitmore, sorry, that Whitmore wouldn't be a good decision for them. But I think with the way that the Houston Rockets, their roster is currently built right now, a true lockdown trusted point guard would be very valuable to them.
Absolutely. And I'm going to let you take most of this, Tim, because you are in Detroit and you do talk a fair amount of Pistons basketball. At least for me, it makes the most sense that they take a forward because they have that two-headed backcourt in Caden Cunningham and Jaden Ivey. So if Cam Whitmore's still there, that's a sensible option. Jarris Walker, if he's available, which he most likely will be, it's a pretty solid pick too.
Yeah, for the Pistons, like obviously you talk about that young backcourt with Cade Cunningham and Jaden Ivey. As long as you keep those guys healthy, they should be able to hold down your backcourt for really years to come.
A big if.
Yes, no, it's always the if. It's the if with every single team and every single guy out there. But really, the one thing for me, I love Jarris Walker's athleticism. I really think that he could turn into a really, crazy, athletic, high flying guy that could be absolutely electric for the Pistons. Again, not that Cam Whitmore wouldn't be a bad pick for them. But me personally, I really like the idea of pairing the electricity of the speed and athleticism that you already have in Jaden Ivey with a guy like Jarris Walker. I mean, especially with, once again, we talk about with head coach blanking on the name, Monty Williams. That's his name. Especially with Monty Williams now there as the head coach.
Took you a little bit. You got there.
Yeah, brain trying. I really think that he could do. Pistons. I really think that Monty Williams could do a fantastic job of harnessing, not only the raw talent but athleticism, speed, jumping of all of these guys to make a really fun offensive team out of these Pistons.
I completely agree. The options are limitless. The Orlando Magic are in an interesting position as well because they're the only team in the lottery with multiple picks. They hold 6 and they hold 11 with that trade with the Bulls that gave the Bulls Nikola Vucevic. And the Magic, they have Paolo Banchero and Franz Wagner in the front court. So the pick clearly here, you need that more dynamic point guard. So you get Amen's brother Osar or Anthony Black.
Yeah. Really, I don't know. I don't know if I have a guy out of those two that I would necessarily prefer. I think both of those guys have the ability to step up and be very talented in this league. With Orlando, you're absolutely right that their backcourt definitely needs more help. And both of those guys, I think, are, they're both pretty solid ball handlers. Obviously, I don't think it's necessarily fair to judge too much of their offensive game right now because so many guys make massive changes in their game once they get to the NBA. But that backcourt could really use some help. So either one of those, I think, would be a very sensible pick.
So at the 7th overall pick, we have my Indiana Pacers, and this is where things get really, really fun because I like the build of this Pacers team right now. You already have Tyrese Halliburton, Andrew Nembhard, and Miles Turner in place at the 1, the 2, and the 5. Don't forget about Benedict Mathurin, who is a really solid 6-man. He still has tons of room to grow here. This team already has a lot of offense, a lot of scoring creation. Tyrese Halliburton, he's the all-star, and then you have Buddy Hield. You don't have 2 guys in the 3-point contest without being able to score the ball. So for me, either Jarris Walker, if he's still available, and if not, Taylor Hendricks. You need a power forward. You need a defensive-minded, high-motor guy, and the top 2 power forwards in this draft are Jarris Walker and Taylor Hendricks. And if you complete that lineup, you have a lineup of Halliburton, Nembhard, Hield, Walker, and Turner with Mathurin as a 6-man. Oh boy.
Talking about a young core, yeah.
Oh boy. Now I'm getting ready for Pacers basketball, baby. That's gonna be a fun team. A fun, young, dynamic team, and gets me really, really excited about the future of that team.
For sure. I mean, I'm not sure if it's hard to tell whether or not I think Jarris Walker will fall to 7. I think it's very possible.
I mean,
but
if
I think
not, you have a
fall
backup
somewhere within that 5 to 8 range, I think. But yes, again, with Hendricks being there as well, the power forward, especially defensive minded, to match with somebody like Miles Turner, and then you have 2 like pretty defensive minded big guys. They have a lot going for them. I think they've been quietly building a lot of pieces. I think that trade for Tyrese Halliburton, sending Sabonis to the Kings, ended up being a great win-win trade.
That was a win-win trade for both of them because the Kings are now contenders somehow, and the Pacers get their all-star.
And Sabonis has continued to play very, very well for the Kings, and Halliburton has continued to grow for the Pacers.
I don't think he's done yet. I think there's still room for Tyrese Halliburton to grow, and I think he can get better and be one of the most dynamic players in the entire NBA. And there's something else that I want to mention. The Indiana Pacers have a lot of draft capital at the end of the first round and into the early second. They hold 26, 29, and 32. Wow. So something that I would love to see them do, if they could trade back up into the late lottery or middle of the first round to get your guy, if there's somebody that's either fallen or you really like that you think is going to be taken, go
Yeah.
up, be aggressive, and get your guy. Because with that core that I've mentioned, you can go take the best player available, whether it be another guard, another three, another big. And might I just say, by the way, we need to like redefine how we value positions, because like positionless basketball
The
is the
power
future.
guard.
I don't confuse me, please. This is already confusing enough trying to label these guys as like one or two positions. Some can
Yeah.
play all five. LeBron James looking at you, but that's neither here nor there. What is there is a very bright future for the Pacers. I'm excited.
I think it should be. They've got a lot going for them.
With the number 8 pick, the Washington Wizards, who we talked about earlier, making that trade for Chris Paul, those pick swaps, and those second rounders, they're into full rebuild mode. You
I
let
feel like we've heard this before from the Washington Wizards.
you let Kuzma go, you let Bradley Beal go. So now you have Chris Paul, who you're probably going to trade for more draft capital, and you need a guard. So we talked about Oscar Thompson and Anthony Black, whichever one of those got taken at 6 by Orlando, you just go with the other one.
Yeah, plain and simple. I think again, for a rebuilding team starting out, it really pays to have a solid guard. And I think they need to, whichever one of those guys is still on the board, just pretty much make that pick kind of as a no-brainer of, whatever's left available for them, and start the future, especially with, whether it be draft capital more from this draft or in the next couple of drafts. They certainly will have a lot of options to continue building their roster with a lot of young guys.
Or you can go Oklahoma City Thunder mode and just flip all of the picks.
I mean, they spent the last 3 or 4 years before this obtaining all the picks, so I mean, I think they have the right to take a couple of them together and start throwing them places.
If only this was like 2K logic, where you could like trade a late round first for 2 future unprotected firsts, and then you just repeat the cycle, so you own like
Yeah,
half
so
the
you
draft.
end up with 17 first-round picks.
Thanks, 2K trade logic. Moving on to number 9 with the Utah Jazz. You need another piece to pair with Lauri Markkanen, and with how I have the draft, going down, Jarris Walker taken by the Pacers at 7. Taylor Hendricks was the backup, so that's where they probably land at 9 with the Jazz. If Anthony Black somehow falls here for some reason, then you just go best available. But the Utah Jazz are in a very interesting situation, I think.
They are, and I don't know really if there's a standout likely option for them, especially after you get past like that first, 6, 7, 8 teams.
Yeah, I think once you
or
get
8
into
guys,
like 9, 10,
it
11,
really
12,
opens up.
13, 14, you can go anywhere, and that's where this
because you're
draft
drafting
becomes so
based
much
on
more predictable.
position. You start drafting on position and potential.
Yeah,
because a lot of there's no longer the stand like, oh, this guy is like head and shoulders above the next guy type thing.
Yeah, you get like the top 3, and then you get like the next 5, and then anything goes. So that's why like here we're more so going to speculate based on position, more so like actual guy. The guys we mentioned here are guys that we think would be available come this point in the draft, but like the point being is like they would be more likely to go in this direction, with position, it's if it could be anybody.
I think I think it would make sense to pair another big with Markin, and the real question is like, do you reach on someone with the potential and athleticism like Derek Lively, or do you go a different route? If some of those guys, like those 2 guys, aren't on the board, because that's kind of what comes to my mind is if a couple of those power forwards go earlier than you expect, okay, how do you switch, or do they make the decision of trying to jump back? Could you see another team jump up to that position?
You can always trade any pick,
because I'm sure there will be a lot of teams that will be trying to jump up to some of these, late single digits, early teens picks.
But if we introduce trades into the mix, then this episode would be 3
I'm not
hours
saying
long.
I'm not saying let's predict picks, but I'm thinking that it depending on how things lie, this could be a kind of likely or potential trade back for the Jazz. if
All
they
right,
don't find what they like.
we got 5 more to go in the lottery. In number 10, we have the Dallas Mavericks, which that was a really, really disappointing finish after trading for Kyrie Irving. We thought that they were going to contend in the West, and instead, Horsey goes splat.
And then
So,
they purposely set everybody out to get a top 10 pick.
yay, Mark Cuban and tanking. So,
Didn't they get some type of like the double-digit $1,000 fine, I think, for that?
yeah.
Something like that.
Tanking is bad. Tanking is wrong. No team should tank. And if you tank, you have a loser's
Then you get
mentality.
Wembanyama, I guess.
No, then you get Connor Bedard and the first overall pick. Looking at you, Chicago sports, bunch of losers. Anyway, the Mavericks
Blame
could
the
go.
rigged NHL system.
Oh my God, the Blackhawks did not deserve that pick. But we're talking NBA, Tim. So with the Dallas Mavericks, what they could do is go in like any different level of position. I could see them going with Derek Lively, have that athleticism of a big, because you get Luka playing whatever you want. It's positionless. It doesn't really matter. And especially
guard.
You play basketball.
You have him playing ball handler.
Yeah. Well, what if Dallas
because he's
resigns
going to have the
Kyrie
ball
Irving?
in his hands.
Well, what if
regardless, Luka Doncic is always going to have the ball in his hands a good amount of the time.
Well, I'm just saying, like, for draft purposes, if
no. If they do bring him back, that does change the positions of what they're looking for. But I think one of the reasons why you say if Derek Lively is on the board here, which I mean
should be,
he should be. It would be a bit of a stretch for him to go above top 10. With his athleticism and his defensive ability, I think it would be a great, addition to guys like Luka and Kyrie, if Kyrie is still there, because then, you have obviously all that ball handling. They can get into the lane. I firmly believe that Derek Lively would be a great, lob city guy to pair with those guys to have around the rim. So I think a big is likely the right option for them. I don't think they need to try to load up on any more guards than they already have. But situation obviously becomes different if all of a sudden that Kyrie Irving isn't in the picture anymore.
Next, we're going to Orlando again with the 11th overall pick. They took a point guard at 6, so they will need a wing guy. So for me, I can see them taking either one of Jet Howard or Grady Dick. That could make a lot of sense. You need a guy that can stretch the floor. You need a guy that can shoot, a shot creator. And with Grady Dick, you also get grit. You will find no grittier player on the court. And we can say that for reasons. But Tim, what do you think? What do you think the Magic are going to do at 11?
No, quite frankly, I firmly believe that Grady Dick is the right pick here for that roster. And exactly
why? Because he's gritty? Because he's a hustle player?
No, for all the reasons that you mentioned. You talk about stretching the floor,
he's a hustle player,
and stretching the floor and shooting and creating his own shots. I mean, we saw a lot of great basketball out of Grady Dick during his time at Kansas. Especially, I think a lot of people were
he's a really tough basketball player by his toughness.
No, by his very impressive shooting ability. Because he shot the ball over 40%, sometimes more towards 50% from 3 for a good part of the season.
Pretty good at that.
I am not going to put myself in the same anywhere near region as Grady Dick because I don't belong anywhere near that level of basketball. But
I will.
Another guy, you talk about Jet Howard. As a possibility. He is another guy that has the ability to continue to grow into, a great offensive player. Obviously he doesn't have the size that Grady Dick has. But I think both of those guys would add, another good scoring option for that team. I just think that the size, ability to stretch the floor, I think Grady Dick likely in my mind has a bit of a higher ceiling.
With the Oklahoma City Thunder at 12, they could do anything. Literally
anything they want.
Anything they want. They could go guard in Kobe Buffkin, or they could go small forward in Leonard Miller. And if you don't want that, Bilal Coulibaly is there. Starting with Kobe Buffkin, He's an incredibly talented combo guard, and he could make a case to rise into the top 10. It would not shock me if he was up towards like 9 or 10. So the Thunder, even though they have Josh Giddey and Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, they are often prone to take the best talent available. With this logic, Jalen Hood Schifino could also very much be in play because people are looking for a combo guard that has the ability to score at all three levels, and JHS definitely fits that bill. With Leonard Miller, he got a guy that averaged a double-double with the G League Ignite, and he checks lots of boxes that the Thunder are looking for. He's multi-positional, high basketball IQ, big frame, long wingspan. And if you want to go with the foreign route, Bilal Coulibaly is there. He's a very long wing that showed really good improvement as a shooter and has legit two-way upside.
Yeah, you talk about these three options, like there's a lot of different ways that they could go, and I think each one of them would pose significant upside to that roster and to that team. Me personally, I think they would do well to get another guard in that system. Me personally, Kobe Buffkin was on a meteoric rise through like the second half of the season
he's on
college
fire.
basketball and heading into the NBA draft and whatnot.
NBA Jam. He's on fire.
He really wasn't making much news or headlines. And one of the things that is very interesting, unfortunate for Michigan and Michigan fans out there, the injury to Jet Howard during the season really led to the increased role for Kobe Buffkin and allowed him to flourish and build his profile. And now Michigan loses both of them. But I really do like the way he plays. He's very tough. He makes very difficult shots. I think he could do very well for helping that offensive side of the ball, especially in that backcourt. But they have such a unique lineup, the Thunder do, that you could put so many guys in so many different positions that you could pretty much say that they have an open position basically anywhere.
Yeah, I completely agree. And with the Raptors at 13, they could also go Kobe Buffkin, or they could go with Jalen Hood Schifino. They want that good combo guard with the scoring ability, and we just talked so much about Kobe Buffkin, and with Jalen Hood Schifino, we talked about him as well, how terrific he is physically. And the thing about him, he is a big game player. And now it's my turn to have some traces to Purdue. We see the Indiana Purdue game where Jalen Hood Schifino absolutely lit it up, which we also covered on the channel. So if you want to watch that, go watch it. Shameless plug. But either way, the Raptors, it seems pretty evident what they're going to do here.
Yeah, no, I completely agree that they definitely are going for some type of guard to, add to that roster. I don't think that there's either one that I would say would be a better fit for that system.
Mm-hmm.
I think either one of those guys poses, great upside to that program. But I would say in terms of Jalen Hood Schifino, I think he has maybe, I would say, a more balanced all-around game than Kobe Buffkin does, but I think Kobe Buffkin might be a little bit more, I would say, electric in terms of his playmaking ability.
It's whatever the scouts want. And to round out the lottery, we have the New Orleans Pelicans, which there's a very real possibility that they could trade up and make a big move and move Zion to do it. But we talked about that when we talked about the Hornets pick. So just in case, we'll talk about Jalen Hood Schifino or Bilal Coulibaly. They are very real potential selections. I more so lean Bilal Coulibaly, considering Jalen Hood Schifino's probably gone, and he showed legit ability to elevate others, with Bilal Coulibaly elevating next to Victor Wembanyama with the Metro 92s. And the Pelicans just need another guard alongside CJ McCollum. So Bilal Coulibaly could fit in there as like your 2-3 guy. I think the options are pretty limitless for the Pels.
Yeah, and this is another one that we could see this pick on the move, so it's hard to tell, especially if the Pelicans choose to make that big jump. But in terms of who they would choose, I think Coulibaly probably makes the most sense for them. I do agree that I guess you can't necessarily say that I'd be surprised if Jalen Hood Schifino stays until 14, because each of these teams will have their own opinions on what they see out of guys. But obviously the talent for Hood-Schifino is very much there to be taken by any number of these teams. And they very well could profit off of the offensive skill set that Koulibaly shows. And a guard is certainly where I think that they need the most help with for the Pelicans.
That's all we got for this episode of Running the Table. If you want to watch our previous episodes, we've been doing this long form content, and we really enjoy this kind of open discussion type deal. So go watch our other episodes. We have all of the sports that you could possibly want here on the channel, and anything else that you guys want us to cover. So if you've have any suggestions, let us know. But if you want more from us, until next time, we're out.